and Dan. Good to see you both. See you and your son. And, we've been, good to see you, brother. Nice to see you. In our Synapse Philosphy group, we meet on Tuesdays, and we've been doing Stephenson's textbook again. And I say again because it's so important. And we're reading from the senior text. And the senior text, there's the beginning is, freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior. And we've been around in chiropractic, even students, you're around it. You've been around it your entire life. So we kind of go from there, from the senior text. And one thing in the introduction that, I love from Stephenson, and he said, when you look at these 33 principles, when you look at the principles of chiropractic, look at it, this is written in 1927, and he said, look at it like a child, and look at it like seeing a photograph for the first time, being a little child, like looking at the back to see if there's the rest of the persons on the other side of the photograph, in a 1927 vernacular, right? And there's a lot of groups out there that want to, it's definite this, and the philosophy is this and nothing else. But what he's saying is really just look at them with new eyes. You're seeing it, it's like the Bible is constantly, we see it with our own eyes in the time that we're in life. And each time we read it or hear the words, we're hearing it or seeing it in new ways. And same thing with our philosophy. And it's just rich, this text. And as we absorb it into ourselves, we become different. Our vibration is different, right? The difference, from never having a chiropractic adjustment. Have you been adjusted before? Yeah. These guys aren't chiropractors, okay? And remind me of your name again? Brian. And what came from is a friend of Devin's. And you guys are patients here. We've been seeing you for a little while. Oh, there's Mario. Hey guys, come up and pull up a couple of chairs. But reading these texts, like we've done it through our podcast a couple of times, and each time I really just read it differently and receive it differently. Same thing with D.D. Palmer's work in the 1914 book, where, the beginning, the first chapter is the moral and religious duty of the chiropractor. And he said, what we're working with, in your spiritual way, whatever you see as the higher power, God, or whatever it is to you, that's what we're working with. And have that passion to go out and take care of the people. If it's not your religious duty, make it your moral duty. Your moral duty to go out and talk and tell and serve the people. And how difficult is that to get through printed words, be a chiropractor, motivating, younger chiropractors, whoever it is, to have a mission. Right? To go out and see the world as chiropractors. Once we're in practice for a while, we start seeing absolute miracles with people, right? Wow, that passion gets even deeper. Like, wow, I've got to tell everybody else. And, that's something I feel it's not transferable. It's experience is so necessary. So what I was thinking of doing, we all maybe read a passage. I've got the 33 principles. You got them over here too. And, we can read a principle or two. Why don't we pass some of these down? If we didn't bring any books, I've got Stephenson's textbook with me. And, we'll read a principle and read a little bit what Stephenson said about it. How about that? We can discuss it. Does that sound good? All right. I've got quite a number of things. I've got the whole thing laid out here fairly well. But I want to start off with principle number 1, okay? Principle number 1, the chiropractic meaning of life. The chiropractic meaning of, that's principle number 2, okay? Oh, there is a major, the major premise, of course. Of course, I got a little nervous after our last thing. But the major premise, principle number 1, and the universal intelligence is in all matter and continually gives to it all of its properties and actions. The major premise of chiropractic. Why would you think that is the number 1 major thing in chiropractic? What does it mean to all of you? Chiropractors or not? And this is an open discussion, okay? you think? How about I read a little from Stephenson, okay? And it's like poetry from this man. It's amazing. Since it is universal, it is common to every locality. Therefore, it is in anything and everything that is in the same locality. In the beginning, it created matter. It did not then abandon matter, but creates or unfolds thoughts for its every moment. This solicitude maintains matter in existence. The physical properties which matter has are but force or energy continually given to it by intelligence. In a like manner, the quality that matter is said to possess is what intelligence is giving it. Life, as chiropractic sees it, is a quality or character that matter may have, occasioned by the presence of or attention of intelligence, having continuation or duration involving time. He says, see Webster. No lesser agency than universal intelligence can prevent any of these things, but the perfect expression of intelligence, according to that what man wants, may be prevented by the limitations of matter. Even this is a universal law and is a phase of universal cycle. So universal, the major premise, universal intelligence is in all matter and continually gives to it all of its properties and actions. Anybody want to read the next one? Passing.
All right. Number 2. The chiropractic meaning of life. The expression of intelligence through matter is the chiropractic meaning of life. The meaning of the term life has many interpretations. It is usually accepted to mean existence or duration or a vague idea of both. To chiropractic, it is definitely the expression of intelligence, the manifestation of intelligence. Then in this broad sense, the meaning is not limited to mere organic matter, but includes all matter. Therefore, we will be obliged to make a deductive classification going from the general to the specific and deal with the specific, these universal life and organic life.
You know, what we talked about on the podcast just the other day was, the audaciousness of, we have figured out the meaning of life. These guys, 1927, B.J. Palmer, Stephenson, and, I'm sure that statement, when they were first writing them out, he wrote the meaning of life. D.D. really thought he was connecting spirit, or knew it was connecting the material and the spiritual world. And that's what in that first chapter we're talking about in 1914 of D.D. Palmer's book, of the chiropractor in 1914. He said on page 3, he said, we've lifted the veil of ignorance from this side to the other, basically. And understanding we're tapping in through the material to reach the spiritual. And Stephenson later on, he talks about the spiritual needs the material to manifest itself. Or it's just molecules, doesn't matter. It needs the intelligence, whether it's a rock, the chair, or a human being. There has to be the intelligence to hold it together to say, I need you to be a great rock, right? You're going to be a magnificent chair or a tree or a human being.
Someone could have called the tree a rock and the rock a tree.
There you go, right? This is words, right? But, it doesn't need the word to express itself, right? So our philosophy is rich. I love diving into this. What do you guys feel? Where are all of you? What do you feel like discussing tonight in our chiropractic philosophy? Okay.
Well, you know what? I have a trouble understanding how it includes all matter, because all matter doesn't have life. From my definition of life, like this couch doesn't have life, but he's saying it's not only organic matter, it's all matter that has this intelligence. So there was an intelligence that put it together.
That keeps it together.
Right.
Well, then
maintains it in existence.
Life in everything.
Well, something's keeping the forces within that couch to be a couch.
The universal forces, not the innate forces. The innate force is not in a rock, but it is universal,
All right, that makes more sense.
okay?
Yeah.
The innate is the housekeeper, that's the animator, that's the extension of living being, God, within the system to animate us into this world, right? Or the mouse or the bird or the tree, right? There's innate intelligence in all of them.
Or just intelligence.
Well, I would say Stephenson was saying even the tree has innate intelligence. And
I would say it just has intelligence. I don't know if I would say it has innate intelligence.
it can heal. It turns toward heliotropism. It turns towards the light to
Okay, let's
feed.
go to the rock.
Well, the rock doesn't have
It has
healing power,
intelligence.
but it has universal intelligence
Right,
and universal
so that's
force.
where you are at 1 and 2.
That's the difference.
You're not actually really into the innate intelligence.
In this, yeah.
You know,
okay.
like the meaning of life is really just saying that anything has intelligence in it. It's not really naming the innate intelligence.
Well, and I think we should skip to innate intelligence in this. Mario, do you have something?
So it's like particulate, whether it's any size or shape is universal. So that's the oneness, and then the animated is the definition of life. Whether it is tree or whatever, it's expressing life in that manner. That's basically the difference.
Sure.
I would say so, yeah.
Cool.
Absolutely. Anybody else?
With like the rock and the tree example, if it doesn't have innate intelligence, it's not able to grow. So the rock is only just gonna decay, while living things could do the opposite of decay, grow.
That's where the people talk about the destructive force of universal intelligence, right? It's destructive. Innate intelligence being constructive. We're constantly rebuilding within the system, and you know, like a mountain or a rock will continue to decay, and when innate intelligence is done in the body, the universal forces take over to replenish that energy into the birds and the trees and the butterflies, right?
Yep.
Anybody inspired in anything that you read around there, or you want to skip to, or something that you'd like to talk about?
I've always struggled with number 33, the law of supply and demand, and maybe it's just that his verbiage is, you know, I struggle with understanding what he intended to say. They're describing I'll read it. The law of demand and supply is existent in the body in its ideal state, wherein the clearinghouse is the brain, innate, the virtuous banker, brain cells are clerks, and nerve cells are messengers.
Well, I'll read what Stephenson says. How about that? This is not an analogy, but a fact. While we are acquainted with the law in commerce, its working out is somewhat imperfect because of the limitations of educated minds. But in the body, with the infinite intelligence in charge, it has approached the perfect very closely. The only limitation being that of matter, right? Application of this principle will show what coordination is and how necessary intellectual adaptation and adaptations are. It shows the union and close relation of these 33 principles and many more which we care to derive from them. It binds them all together in an unbeatable unit, and that unit is the essence of chiropractic. Know your principles thoroughly, and no problem of chiropractic that is practical will trouble you long. Okay, so that's from Stephen right out. He said, you better get it, Devin, because this is an important one.
All of them.
All of them. He said all of them. But reading them each time, like, getting stuck on one and understanding it. What is it that I don't quite understand about them? I love, you see how, I've gone through these, I've got notes at home, I've read them, and I meant to bring Strauss's book, where he talks about the 33 principles, and, in understanding them better. Because to understand chiropractic, you think about what he's done, and when you go through these, he starts with universal intelligence, then he goes through innate intelligence, and then, educated and then innate intelligence. And really, he gives us a flow of understanding. And you think about in chiropractic school, he's trying to get to all of us an understanding of how the universe works, right? You're talking in quantum physics at the very beginning of quantum physics. Schrodinger and his cat was probably around near the same time, 1920s early, right? This is 1927. When you start reading D.D. Palmer, he's talking in the same way in quantum thought in the early 1900s, way before, quantum physics, making up their own language and trying to describe it to us. That's very difficult, right? But that's why the 33 is so important in understanding them and digesting them one at a time. It might take years of just trying to understand one. The descriptions from Stephenson are excellent, though. He does a really good job.
I think what he's saying there is, in the body, it's ideal. If the body needs something, it's totally supplied. So if anything that the body needs, you have an unlimited supply. The only thing that stops that is the matter, is the limitation of man. So if the body develops cancer cells, then the demand would be, for T cells to come into play to get rid of the cancer cells. And it's always the ideal state. So whatever the demand of the body, whatever the body needs, the supply is going to be there from this, except because of the law, because of matter, because of the limitations of matter. So we always tell patients, your body's always going to heal, but if somebody shoots you, and you got a bullet inside of you, your body's not capable of kind of going around that. That's past what the body's able to take care of. It's a limitation of matter. So as I say in the Bible, the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. But on a higher level, everything that the body needs is going to be provided for. So that's like when we tell patients, for example, you have everything you need to be happy, you have everything you need to be healthy, it's already inside of you, and we're going to open up those channels. Everything's already on the inside. You don't have to worry about anything.
Great. Anybody else?
Well, you mentioned an interesting word which is cancer. I was with Dr. Decken talking about cancer because it's growing and it finally kills the person. And we're trying to understand it through the chiropractic philosophy. And I remember that Dr. Decken said, that's pretty much like a different intelligence. It's not your innate intelligence. It's like that becomes kind of like a parasite, like a separate, destructive, universal intelligence. Because here, the principle 25, it says the character of innate forces, the forces of innate intelligence never injure or destroy the structures in which they work. But cancer is destroying and killing people. So, and that you mentioned T cells, our innate intelligence is trying to kill that cancer because it doesn't belong to the body. It's not a regular cell, it's not part of us anymore. Even though it was created inside of us, it's not part of us anymore. It's not it's modified DNA, it's literally
Well, that's a limitation of matter, right? Innate's trying the best that it can, giving it all it's got, right? But there's a limitation in the matter. The body's not able to repair those things, or it's not able to do it in time. But innate's always working for your betterment, not for your detriment. It's always working to advance you, but maybe you just can't do it. It's giving everything it can, 100%. But maybe if someone's very ill, that 100% is maybe less than what mine is, right? Or whomever. So it's doing the best it can all the time, 100%. But there's a limitation to matter.
Mm-hmm.
However, it came.
What is that limitation of matter? What causes the limitation of matter? Because I've seen some patients that were subluxated, and once you corrected the subluxation, their body was able to heal. So the limitation of matter could be a subluxation, or it can be some kind of, could be a chemical subluxation, could be a physical subluxation, could be an emotional subluxation.
100%.
So
Well, I always tell patients, like, the body, the way I explain it is the body was never designed for us to be in a car accident. The body's never designed for us to be in the kind of stress, to eat the kind of foods that we're eating. And to me, the body was never designed for that. So yeah, when the patient's clear, definitely in so many cases, like, the body can repair that. The body can kind of go against that universal intelligence, which is destructive. But in a lot of cases, in many cases, it doesn't, because I just tell my patients, it's too much for the body to handle. We were never designed for a lot of the stuff that we go through today. And to me, that's the limitation of matter.
I think that's the principle before they have there, right?
Yeah, the limit of adaptation, but again, going back to the subluxation theory, is who's not a chiropractor? You're not? 1, 2, 3. So you guys know what a subluxation is? Yeah. So the brain is not able, the body's not able to send a message to that part of the body. So if the person has a nerve that goes to the thyroid that's not functioning, and the brain cannot communicate with that thyroid, the body's not gonna be able to do what it's supposed to do, and there's not gonna be any communication from here to here. If you cut yourself, and the body knows there is damage here, and that the nerve is communicating with the brain, then it's gonna repair this thing. But when it comes to cancer, it's the same thing. I mean, if the body cannot communicate with that organ, this one or the pancreas, whichever it is, then how is it gonna repair itself? How is the body gonna know what to do with that damage or that abnormal cell that's duplicating and multiplying and creating this tumor or whatever it is that's causing the cancer? How is it gonna stop that? If there's no communication from here to that one organ, or the pancreas, or the liver, or the kidney, or the lungs, or whatever it is.
I don't believe that there's not a communication completely gone. I just think that the adaptability, whatever the mental impulse is trying to communicate, cannot get to that tissue cell to make it go to adaptation fast enough as much as the other one is mutating. Is really because it's all about how the mental impulse does its job. And there's just no clear cutoff of communication. It's either too slow, too fast. It's always the same message, because it's always the same message in the realm above the brain, in where it sits, where it lives. So I think it's more that the subluxation just interferes with the normal flow for our body to be able to do the proper adaptation at that moment, at that nanosecond, or whatever it is really what the subluxation is doing. Because it's just impossible to have no communication to something. It's just not the right command of the communication.
So then the limitation of the matter would be what we're supplying that intelligence with, the building blocks of life, the energy we're inputting from the brain and creating those frequencies to heal ourselves, the nutrition that we're delivering, the environment that's toxic or whatever. How are we dealing with those, either through our actions or our removal of those subluxations, so that we can optimize all of those factors and decrease as much of those limitations as we can. So I think that's the major goal of chiropractic, is to unite those two things and decrease as much of the limitation of matter as we can through educating our mind and uniting that intelligence of our educating with our
It nates the healer. The adjustment or chiropractic isn't, right?
Right.
You remove the interference, the limitation of matter. You also think about if it's toxins, right? And that person is toxic. The system is, has to work triple, double overtime. Maybe you can't get through all the quagmire of garbage, right?
Yeah.
If it's emotional, it could be the same thing. If it's a subluxation that actually caused the organ or whatever to fail, or whatever it's doing, and that subluxation is adjusted, we could see big change. We've all seen big things happen over time, and then we saw them not happen, right? I've seen it the other way. People continue to decline. So if it was just the adjustment, why would one heal and not the other? If they're both cleared of subluxations, maybe this person's been in a much more toxic lifestyle or whatever it may be, and the body's doing the best it can. Go ahead.
You know, the other thing I think about is how long they're holding the adjustment for.
Yeah.
Because when the adjustment is being held, everything's flowing through, but if they're out a couple of hours or a day afterwards, I kind of see it like two armies, you know, like, you know, the good army is winning and then, you know, they're out of alignment and then the other one takes over. That's why a lot of times we have patients like, they're better one day, they're worse the next day. They're better one day, they're worse the next day. Especially patients that are not following any kind of care plan. You know, like, oh, it came back again. Of course it did, because you were only unsubluxated for a day or two. I told you to come in pretty regularly and you decided not to. And so, you know, they have to understand it's like the longer that you are able to be clear and be unsubluxated, the more your body has a chance to fight whatever, you know, it's fighting. Like, you know, old-time chiropractors, I don't know if we do this today, but, you know, used to sometimes see patients every day. Now I'm gonna see you every day for 2 weeks, Sundays and Saturdays and everything like that. The other thing that I also think about that this also brought up as a limitation of matter, and I know I am guilty of this, is what is the chiropractor or the patient thinking about that? You know, like, I have patients, I'm like, this ain't gonna get better. Like, so I'm putting that into the system. I have a patient right now with vertigo, who's been with me for a month, and he's like, he's not getting better. And that was my first thought. And that's you know, that's shame on me, you know, for thinking that. You know, I used to love sometimes the old time chiropractors, like, you know, we're gonna get rid of everything, you know, and a lot of times they did just because of their passion and it convinced the patient, like, wow, I can be better and I can be healthy. So how much is it the patient's thinking in their mind, like, this probably is not gonna go away, and then how much is it for the chiropractor? Because again, like I said, I'm guilty of this, like, yeah, this is gonna be a tough case. You know, oh, someone comes in with cancer. Yeah, this is tough. Someone comes in with back pain, like, oh yeah, we got this. And the back pain goes away and the cancer doesn't, and is some of that due to maybe what our thoughts are, you know, or the patient's thoughts, or the patient's thoughts because we're not really being like bold and saying like, yeah, innate's got this.
Commanded to happen. Thoughts are
But you
things.
know, you know what the outcome is gonna be on any
Never.
given day.
Yeah, but I pretend like I do.
I've got a school.
That's a hard road to walk.
Yeah, I know.
Oh my God.
Because
You
that's
can't
a lot of
direct an
that's a lot of responsibilities
Yeah.
for all outcomes. You know, you can't, you know, have the celebration for the good one.
Yeah.
And then the bad one, you just want it to go away. We're not involved in any one of those.
That's right. You can't dictate an ache. You want somebody's back pain to go away, but maybe it's their heart that needs to heal first, or the kidneys, or the
And
liver.
that you never knew that the
You
heart
never
was
knew.
like that.
It's not. It's a
But-
hierarchy.
So,
You can
but
live with
I
back
think-
pain.
I think he's got a point.
Yeah, I think
Of
so.
course.
Because I see it all the time. I mean, I have the mindset that people are gonna get well, but, you know, the mindset of the chiropractor is very important. But the mindset of the patient is also very important, because some patients don't wanna heal, so maybe, you you see somebody that's just like every day, you see them and they keep saying the same thing, you know, doc, it's here, doc, it's there, doc, it's this. Like, I got this one patient, I mean, I dread seeing him because I know for like 10 minutes it's gonna be this, that, you know. And it's the same thing every day in his mind. This is like a recurrent subluxation, it just comes back every day. And I know I can fix the person, I know that I can get him better, or Nate can get him better, you know, and I know it can be corrected, and I have the belief in myself. So it's true, you gotta have, the DC has to have the belief, and the patient has to have the belief, and that sometimes is really, really tough. And I think that this is where, when the emotional thing has a lot to do with it.
Big time.
Because there's people out there that every day they get in their car and they think, I'm gonna get into a car accident, I'm gonna get into a car accident, I'm gonna get into a car accident, and sure enough, they do, because that's all that's in there. And then there's some people that are the opposite, you know, nothing is gonna come my way. An accident is not an accident, it's something that happens, you know, when you attract it, you know, I mean, that's my belief, you know. So you have those the two forces, and, you know, some forces are positive and some forces are negative, and, you know, you gotta have the right combination when they walk in that front door. You know, is the patient bringing all the negativity that they brought in their whole life, that they carried their whole life, and they're just like bringing all that in, and they're blocking their healing, you know, process. They're not allowing their body to heal.
People get their identity. I'm back pain, I'm sciatica, I'm cancer, or heart disease, cancel, all that. But a lot of people get their identity from that. You know, I've seen that 100 grandmas, you walk into the room, oh, they get so much worse, right? And around my mother's whole neighborhood, as soon as you walk in, I heard about every problem every old lady had. But they got their identity from that. You know, even my mother, she'd give me the list of everything wrong with her every time I called her on the phone. I miss that now, I have to say. But, you know, that people get their identity from those things.
Well, it's mind over matter, right?
That's right.
Like you were saying, you have people that worry about, oh, I don't wanna get cancer, I don't wanna get cancer, I don't wanna get cancer.
That's it. Sigafus taught us focus on what you want, not what you don't want. You focus on what you don't want, you're gonna get it, right? You focus on what you want, you'll get that too.
You're mentally and spiritually connecting something that you don't wanna connect.
Exactly.
But he made a great point though, because even though, our job is to remove interference, you're actually right too, because I have talked to so many chiropractors that they've been in practice 10, 15 years, 20, and they never seen a quote unquote chiropractic miracle. It's all back pain, neck pain, and headaches. And I'm like, are you serious? I've never seen people getting better for X, Y, and Z. No, never. And it's because they don't know this. Like they went to a school that they were never taught this.
Yep.
They never care about it. They went to the field thinking that they were sort of a medical doctor. And it's like,
So you get what you ask for.
And exactly, and it shocks me. And you know what? I think there are patients that probably have, but they never realized it was chiropractic. And that's one point. And the other point too, that even though we remove interference, BJ always talk about, like, you know, these rivers of life flowing through people. One of my favorite experiments done in Harvard, they were goofing around and they got emotions like fear, anger, compassion, love, and they were supposed to touch people with their eyes closed and try to identify the emotion. And they were thinking, maybe 1 out of 20, and they guessed that more than 50% of the time. And the most guessed emotion was compassion. It was guessed 64% of the time. So that they realized that people can feel your intention through your hands. So, and that makes a huge difference in practice. So when I read that experiment, I said, you know what? I'm never goofing around. I'm not coming to the office angry, or if I have problems, you know, do my breath, I ground, and let's get going. Because people can truly feel that. And how many patients, you probably experience that too, it's like, oh man, you're so good, I went over there and it sucked. And I said, yeah, because they were just doing back pain. Here, you know, I know that I'm working this L2, it's back pain, but also go to your intestines, controls your neurohormones. There's so much going on in that area, not just back pain. So yeah, I understand our job is not to take, not to claim the healing, because that's medical profession. You know, like, oh yeah, that doctor cured me, that doctor killed me. And I always tell people I'm the worst doctor in the world because I never kill anybody. But still, understanding that, I also understand what you can express through your hands, and I'm grateful that I get to do that every day.
You know, the old chiropractors were taught a lot differently in school than any of us were. And the x-rays up on I was doing with my, I just framed them, put them on the wall. My mentor, Clarence Jensen, he was at Clearview with Dr. Nell was in Clearview with him, and Nell Williams, with BJ in the 1950s. And he drew all that out with me, and we did our x-ray analysis and did my x-rays. And he did full spine just like BJ did, and you know, you see volume 20, it's a great one to look through. And there was a big spot on my lung. He put his hand over it. He said, don't name it, don't own it. Don't name it, don't own it, right? And I was in Dr. Fox's class. If you guys, anybody was at Life, I mean, we studied our x-rays really well. And he said, don't name it, don't own it. Put his hand right over it, and with authority. I was like, yes, sir, okay. laid me down on the table, toggled my atlas, and I got the biggest, I thought, oh, you guys, we've all had ingrown hairs, right? I thought it was an ingrown hair, and it was a lymph node. I think it's this one right here, actually, excuse me, it's gross, right? But that's what it was, that thing from my lung into a lymph node after an adjustment. Don't name it, don't own it. If I stressed and worried about it and had to go for a biopsy, what would I do? I'd be claiming that, putting my energy where I don't want it, right? Don't name it, don't own it. But, you know, he was taught directly from B.J. Palmer. How far have we lost that in our education of chiropractic, right? Of saying that with authority to somebody, where now we're worried about, well, we better refer, and you better do this, and you better do that, right? And claim that for yourself, and do this litany of tests, right? Yeah, good discussion, good guys, that's awesome.
And you guys probably experienced that too. Oh, sorry, go ahead though.
Right.
I don't want, no, like, that too, what you're saying is like, I recently saw a patient with a fused neck with horrible headaches, and no one would touch her neck. I've been to 3 chiropractors, and it's like, dear Lord, like your C1, C2 is still there, and you do the open mouth, and the atlas is like that. So yeah, I toggled that baby, and the headaches went away. So it's like, where is that? I don't know what to call it, but it's like I understand the fear of referring out. Oh my gosh, be careful, being scared of being sued. I get that, but also people, they're looking for a solution. We have it, and we're living in a medical world with fear of that, and I just don't get it. I sort of get it, but at the same time I don't. It's
People are
like,
looking for someone to trust. What should I do? You know, what do you say when, what should I do? We're gonna clear your subluxations, and you've gotta clean up everything in your life. You know, if you're eating Twinkies and stopping at McDonald's on your way home from here, you're gonna get what you're gonna get. But if you wanna change something, you gotta change everything, right? You gotta change everything in your life, even the way you're thinking. I mean, it's a big deal, and if it's easy, you tell me how to do it, right? It's not easy. It takes a full lifetime to get through all the garbage we've been trained from other people. That's where we get it from. Innate's perfect. Universal's perfect. Educated is the dum-dum. That's the stuff we've just learned from other men and women. That's it.
yeah, and it changes all the time. Yeah.
Continually.
Sorry, I interrupted you.
So I was talking to a friend, who was asking me for advice. And they have multiple myeloma. And, you know, they were saying that, you know, they have no idea what could be causing this. And I was explaining the subluxation to them, I was explaining, you know, how that works, you know, and the intelligence, all that, and they told me, you know, if there is something wrong, if there's something, you know, if there's subluxation, how come I don't feel it? How come I'm not in pain? How come, you know, I'm fine? And the analogy I used was, you know, we were talking about car maintenance, you know, to simplify it, and they're not into medical or healthcare or anything like that. And I said, you know, if the axis on your tires are shifted a certain way, you're not gonna notice it. You know, you might veer off the road a very little bit. You won't notice it for miles and miles and miles. But the wear and tear on your tires is gonna increase. And, you know, eventually when, you know, you might not notice it, but you're causing more strain on your body than, you know, than ideally it should be, than innate intelligence wants it to be. So I think that speaks back to if there's like an organ that's not, that's failing or something like that, that's a tire popping. And, you know, it might have taken years for that slight shift in the axis, the misalignment, to you know, to cause that issue, but it doesn't mean it's not there. And you would never know without a chiropractor.
That's right.
Without a mechanic, you know, either.
You know, the mechanic is reading the language, right? The language of the tire. Let me measure this. He knows what to look for. The chiropractor, we're reading the language innate intelligence is trying to express to you. Subluxations don't happen by accident. You used to get hit by a bus. They say most subluxations are coming from the system, like 80% or something like that. And so it's a communication. Hey, help me here, this will help me. D.D. Palmer got that message. BJ refined it. It's for us to really learn that language every day. And to adjust, I mean, I've been crunched a lot to a point where I don't go to anybody. That's the opposite of an adjustment for me, right? If almost outside of this group, if just to go somewhere to get cracked is really all you're getting, right? But to get adjusted properly, just like we're saying with the chiropractor, how we're thinking, how that chiropractor's grounded means everything. Absolutely. So, it's an inside job on all of it.
Reggie Gold used to say, if you're subluxated, you're better off, no matter what illness you have, you're better off without a subluxation. And again, it goes back to who does the healing. It's not us, it's the innate that does it. Your body's gonna do what it needs to do as long as it's functioning properly. So if you're subluxated, your body's gonna do what it can do and what it must do to get you out. As long as there's no limitation of matter. As long as it's not too late.
That's right.
You brought up Reggie. One of the things I loved about Reggie, he was able to take the patient from what they had to totally a conversation that didn't involve that, and this is why you need to be adjusted. And to me, that's really the hardest thing, because the symptoms start, especially when the patient starts asking, and then you have to deal with what they're saying and everything like that. My favorite patients of all time are the ones that don't say anything. You don't know, is this going good? Is this going bad? And you want to ask them, you're like, you've been here a month, you getting better? And, and it's that's my educated in my mind, did their pain go away? Are they happy? They're still coming in. And they're my favorite patients, even though it drives me crazy, because they're not saying, wow, everything is great and I'm so much better, or they're not saying, oh, everything is really the same. It's just they're really, really quiet. And I sometimes dream of a practice of having a million of those patients, because that's really not our
Sometimes you
job.
do it all the time.
Huh?
Not sometimes dreaming of it, do it all the time.
You know what, and that really just comes from me. And it's actually funny, because a lot of times when I let my patients know up front that we're not gonna talk about your symptoms. When you're coming in, you're laying down, we're gonna adjust you, and this is why we're adjusting you and everything. Sometimes it breezes through, but every once in a while I'll get a patient and they'll get to their 12th visit and we do a re-exam and we give them a little thing to fill out, and it talks about their chief complaint. Is it, and I do that because I am a doctor and I've got to, there's certain things I've got to do because I have the license that I have. So it's is it better, is it worse, is it, whatever the case is. And sometimes patients will say amazing things oh yeah, my headaches have totally gone away after the 5th or 6th adjustment. And I'll ask the patient, why didn't you tell me? That's so great. They're you told me not to tell you anything. And I love that. So a lot of it is the mindset of the chiropractor. I know when I walk into the adjustatorium and my mindset is just I'm not gonna worry about what this person has. We're gonna clear this subluxation 100%. And we're just gonna do what we gotta do, give them a hug and say, see you Wednesday. If I come in like that, I find that the patient's more responsive to that. They're not talking, they know why they're there. If I come in a little bit more maybe lackadaisical, I'm not 100%, and they just open up, hey, how you doing? How was your weekend? Oh, let me tell you. And I'm oh God, I walked into that, So, I don't know where it's going with that. But I think the thing is, that's one of the things I loved about Reggie Gold was he was, after the first visit, after he would ask them about their particular problems, because people want to get that out. That's why they came in, because they have headaches, or they have back pain, or they have IBS, or whatever. And he would literally take the pad he was writing on and says, I'm going to put this aside now, and we're not going to bring that up again. And I'm going to tell you what chiropractic's really all about. And I can do that, but I find myself drifting back to that again. On the 5th visit, on the 10th visit, on the 20th visit, so I don't know how it's going, since you've been here. And I think that just does a disservice, rather than, that's what I love about the old time chiropractors. And they were seeing so many people, and just people were, there were miracles going on. They may not even known what they were, because they weren't asking all the time. They weren't asking, their success didn't depend on what the patient said, or what was going away, or what was there, or what was that. Their success depended on one thing: did they clear the patient out? If they did, it was a great adjustment, and that's all that they are supposed to really know of. So,
I had a great analogy. I was just thinking about this of limitations of matter. If you've ever done any gardening and you catch a plant just in time, you can nurture it back, it's wilted, looks terrible, and you bring it back, right? Or you get to a point where I've done everything I could and it doesn't come back. It's reached its limitation of matter. It gave it the best it can, right? And then it gets reclaimed. That energy gets reclaimed for something else. Well, anybody else have anything?
Well, I have something I'd like to share.
Go ahead.
Because today, I worked in a very medically oriented clinic. It was hard. First time I've touched a hydrocollator since school. I don't even think I touched it when I was in school. Gross.
You had to do this stuff?
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
I can't
God,
tell
you
you how
bring
many
out
times I
hives?
saw the phrase "gap the joint" in the previous note.
What does that mean? Never heard that before.
It is it's something they're teaching in schools lately. Gap the joint. They just want to fire the mechanoreceptors, create cavitation, and little endorphin rush to help with pain relief. It is total BS. It is so limiting. And one of the patients I got
So
to
it's
take
just
care
a
of.
pop it, pop it, pop it, pop it, pop it?
It's primarily an acupuncture office. They also happen to use chiropractic and physiotherapy services. That's another weird thing, which I don't even want to get into right now.
Wow.
But
Well, you need to cleanse yourself, honey.
that's why I'm
Well,
here.
you're here.
They
You're being dip.
definitely do.
But I had one of the patients, and it was all VA people, by the way. And so one of this guy tried to dive and landed on his head, and someone scared the crap out of him. So constant neck pain, constant headaches, vertigo, and he came in complaining about how his neurologist was an idiot and didn't even help him. And then he's like, well, look at my x-rays, so what do you think? One guy told me that I had a piece of bone sticking in the base of my head and it wasn't safe to, so I look at it, no, he's got a long styloid process, sticking down, and literally choking off the blood supply to his brainstem. And someone misidentified that, scared the crap out of him.
Wow. So did you adjust them today?
Of course I did. Just as Atlas, not posterior.
Fantastic.
And he could stand up straight, and he wasn't in pain anymore. He felt clear, and he could focus and think.
Well, guys, we brought in the light because it's been cloudy and gloomy all day, okay? And the light is shining bright right now. So if you guys need to move and get out of the light or whatever, if it's bothering you or what have you, it's hot enough in here. My AC is getting replaced on Monday. It feels pretty good. It's not too shabby. But in those moments where you have, I called it turning tricks when I started in chiropractic and starting my practice of going out and just, doing whatever I can to make money and start my practice. And I've been in practices like that, and it's hard. And it's like, it takes a piece of you. I've felt those things for myself. I don't know about you, but it feels like it takes hours, maybe days off of your life.
Oh, it's even better than that. As I'm leaving, the front desk is like, oh, it's such a pleasure working with you today, Doc. I heard you live in Melbourne, and we just opened a clinic in Melbourne. Maybe you should apply for a job.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, they're here.
They're here. Well, this is a booming area. It really is. It's booming quickly. You guys are seeing that in North County for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Big time.
Yep.
So, anybody have anything else? I was gonna read one. Principle number 26, the comparison of universal and innate forces. So, in order to carry on a universal cycle of life, universal forces are destructive and innate forces are constructive as regards to structural matter. For our study of physics, we know that the universe is full of energy. If we see it manifest in every bit of matter, there seems to be no limit to the amount of energy that may be in the space occupied by matter. But there seems to be a limit to how much of it a given bit of matter can express. Yet, that limit may be of astonishing proportions. Just just what may be the electrical potential in, say, a pint of water or a marble. Like matter, energy cannot be destroyed, but we see its manifestations reappearing in many different forms. Just the first paragraph. So it sort of touched back on what we were talking about universal forces and innate forces. I just wanted to give that part. Anybody have any insights on that? The next one, the normality of innate intelligence, number 27. I think it's really, really important. Innate intelligence is always normal, and its function is always normal. Innate can't be abnormal. When we have something going on within our system, innate's still 100%. It's just not able to handle what's happening. There's a limitation to that matter. I can't fix the tomato plant. It's gone past my ability to heal it, right? So the innate still is always 100%, and it's always perfect. It's just reached its limit. I cannot repair. I mean, I've got a crazy toe after I broke my leg. My toe still hasn't healed a year later, right? I got the Vibe plate to help my bone heal, and it actually did heal faster, so I brought it in here to give it to people, right? My bone knitted quicker. I kept re-injuring it, but still this toe, the limitation of the matter here, I have to walk on the outside of my leg. What does that cause? I'm compensating through my hip and my pelvis. I still am holding my